Mastering electronic dance music.
Welcome back to Mastering EDM with Logic Pro, and this is the 5th video in my series introducing music theory. And the last thing I want to cover here is actually I'm going to try to make it brief, and if you'll notice I'm talking a little bit faster than I normally talk. That's because I've noticed that my videos are pretty long. So I'm going to talk a little quicker but try to remain clear, and I'll cover less material in each video so you guys can kind of get have smaller chunks that you could kind of listen to, watch, and learn from. You don't have to focus so much on watching a 45-minute video in, you know, a small amount of time in your day that you have. So I'm going to try to be brief here, but basically what I have right now is this is a kick drum, and it is on every beat. You probably know what a beat is, but it's essentially in EDM, it's typically whenever the kick drum hits, that's a beat. That's just because that's the way it's been lined out. There are abnormalities to this and changes up in drum patterns and stuff like that. But for the most part, when you're listening to an EDM track, each kick drum is one beat. And that is equivalent to a couple things, but I'll talk about those in a minute. First of all, let me just show you kind of what it sounds like in reference to what we have right now. So here it is. So it kind of just sounds like a cycling kick drum, which is exactly what it is. So so what is this equivalent to? 4 beats is equivalent to what's called a bar. So we have all 4 of these, and if you'll notice up here, it has the number 1 and 2 and 3, and it just kind of literally continues indefinitely, and you could extend your project to an unlimited number of bars, theoretically. I don't know if there's actually a software limit, but that doesn't matter. So what we have is we have these bars, and this is the largest unit of measurement in EDM typically. So people say, oh, you got that section and it's running for 8 bars or 16 bars, or bring in that track or bring in that synth after a bar, or right before the drop you have 1 bar that's kind of like a drum fill or something like that. So that's what they mean when they say bar. 1 bar is 4 beats, and you just kind of multiply it out. So if you had 8 bars, that'd be 8 times 4 beats, which is 8, 16, 24, 32, 32. So you have 32 beats in 8 bars, but that's kind of irrelevant in the sense that nobody really thinks of it that way. Everybody talks about bars in long note terms. So I'm going to talk about a couple other things just to kind of help you understand some things, but they're not something that you really need to know what people are, you don't need to use it often. It's not something that's vital. It's just something that when people talk about it, you'll know what they're talking about when you learn it. So we have 1 beat, which is one of these spaced this much. I'm talking about the spacing now. So 1 beat is a space of this much, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 of these smaller squares. And if you zoom it in and out, it might change how many squares there are. I don't think so, but for the most part, it's basically separation of, if you look at those ticks up there, each one of these is 1 beat. So it's a separation of 4 of these. And note, I can offset these, and it's not called 1 beat much anymore. It's typically called a quarter note when you have the same spacing as 1 beat, but it's offset somewhere else. So let me just get rid of, actually, I'll keep this here for future reference, but let me switch to this one. And actually, let me just unmute. There we go. So there we go. That's a quarter note separation there. Just because if you look, these lines right here are typically a little bit lighter than the rest of the lines, so they kind of stand out a little bit more. So that kind of helps you there. But this is a quarter note. Quarter note separation, I've said that a couple times. Now, what's the 8th note? The 8th note is when you half that separation. And if you look here, that kind of makes sense because you have 1/4 and you have 1/8. So what happens if you have 4 quarter notes, then that makes, add them up, that's 4 to 4, and that equals 1. So what happens if we go back to this one and we reduce the distance by half? Then we get an 8th note separation. And if I fill this out, whoa, that is not what I wanted to do. If I fill this out, then you'll see that this separation, oh dang it, now I messed up my layout. I liked how it was before. Come on. Okay, whatever. So now if you count, we have 4, 8. So 8 out of 8 is 1 bar. So the math kind of makes sense here. Now if I do the same thing again and I halve the distance by adding a note in the middle of each of these, which I'll show you. Actually, let me just go back to how it was because it makes more sense this way. If I halve the distance again, then I have a 16th note, which is, if you look again, that makes sense because you have 1/8, and what's half of 1/8? That would be 1/16 if you know your math. And so the way this works is essentially you could get 1 bar, and excuse me, you could split it up as many times as you want. So 1 bar would be that long, and you have a note going on for a bar. And if I drag this down to half, that would be a half note, which is not commonly used in terms of terminology. But that is something that you'll probably use when you're doing chord progressions. And if you split again, quarter note, and then 8th note, 16th note, and then you actually can do a 32nd note, which is where, if you look, it says 120 next to length, and that would be the length of a 32nd note, in case you need to know and you want it to be precise. So that's how you actually line up that one. But so the whole deal here is you just have 1 bar, and each of these numbers is splitting it up, and 1 quarter note is equal to 1 beat. That's all you really need to take away from this. And people will talk about these, and it's just good to know what they're talking about when they say it, so you're not totally lost and totally out of it. But it's not talked about as often as things like knowing the key you're in and knowing note separations, because the timing is more something that you throw in when you're listening to it, and not so much something that you'll do like you don't really talk about so much what your note separation is. It'd be more likely that someone to ask you what key your song is in than what your note separation is in your drop or something like that. So really, that's pretty much all you need to take away from this. This is just some good stuff to know. And if somebody talks to you about it, then you'll get the idea of what they're talking about, and you don't have to worry about being totally out of the dark, or in the dark rather, about the subject. So that's it for this video. If you liked it, like it. If you don't like it, then throw something in the comments and tell me what you like me to change. And subscribe if you haven't already, because I got more stuff coming out, and I'm gonna try to switch up my schedule a little bit so you guys get more consistent things that are of smaller size, so that you could kind of if you got a busy day, then you could just watch a 15-minute video, or rather, instead of a 20 to 30-minute video per week, you get like 5 to 10-minute video every couple of days or something. So it's a more sensible schedule, instead of something that's like not as often and it's a lot longer and harder to deal with. So I'm going to try to do that schedule, and I'm going to see how that works out. But I'll probably start implementing that next week, and we'll just see how that plays out. And if you guys like that, that's great. If you don't like that, as I said, leave comments or send me a message, something like that, and give me feedback so I know what you guys want. So that's it for this video, and I will see you next time.